Hi everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic day. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you this adorable log cabin quilt. The finished measurement of this quilt is 70 inches squares. It is made out of 9 log cabin blocks. Each block is 21 inches squares. But believe it or not, it's pretty simple to make because all you need to do is to use one charm pack. The rest are 16 jelly roll strips or the 2.5 inches strip. This is a great scrap booster project. If you have leftover charm packs and jelly roll, you can gather them all out and make this quilt. I also eliminate the sashing and the border if you wish to make this quilt a lot simpler for you, and the finished measurement without the sashing or the border will be about 62 inches square. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and start our tutorial very soon. I hope you enjoyed this whole video. If you have any question, don't hesitate to leave me a comment down below and consider subscribing to this channel. I post weekly fun sewing project. So enough of me talking, let's get started with our quilting project. So this is the block that we are going to make. As I mentioned earlier, the size of this block is 21 inches square, and in the center here is the charm pack or the 5-inch square, and everything else is the jelly roll strips. So we're gonna do 4 layers of jelly rolls around this charm square to create the block. Prepare your charm pack and the jelly roll strips. You may gather whatever you have on hand, just like what I'm doing here, or use a fresh new roll. It's totally up to you. Take one of the jelly roll strip. I'm gonna take the shorter one here and then place it on one of the sides of your charm pack, and then you wanna sew this with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Then you wanna finger press this a little bit. Take a scissor and cut the excess fabric from the jelly roll. Now you want to take another strip and place that right side together, and again you want to sew this with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Then again you want to trim that excess fabric. You may also use the rotary cutter instead of scissor if that's what you prefer. Now we're going to work on this side, so take one strip, line that up right side together, and then sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. And again you want to trim whatever excess fabric you've got. So basically you're going to work your way around until you've got 4 layers of jelly rolls. Alright, so that's it. Our block is pretty much done. So if you're not sure, you may simply count. There should be 4 panels of jelly rolls on all 4 sides of your charm pack. Now you want to go ahead and give this a quick press, and if necessary you can also square it up. So the way you want to press this is from the center and make your way to the sides. You just want to be careful not to distort your fabric. And once you've done that, you want to go ahead and make 8 more blocks just like this. For the sashing and the border, you will need about a yard of fabric. You can use either solid or something that is more subtle than your blocks, or anything that you think can pull the whole blocks together. Just have fun and experiment with your fabric choice. So you will need to cut in total 14 2.5 inches strips. So you want to cut it from one selvage end to another, and from there you want to cut 621 by 2.5 inches strips for sashing 1, 266 by 2.5 inches strips for sashing 2, 270 by 2.5 inches strips for border 1, and 266 by 2.5 inches for border 2. I will include all the detailed measurement on the description box down below as well for your reference. Right now I'm working on the extracting sashing 1, the 21-inch strips. So I have stacked up 3 strips together, and then now I'm going to cut right on the center fold. That will give me the 22-inch strip, and then I'm going to trim off from the selvage end 1 inch, and that will give me the exact 21-inch strips. Then I want to do the same with the other halves. To extract the long strips, obviously we're going to need to join 2 strips together. Now start off by trimming off the selvage ends of all the strips. Once you've done that, you want to cross the strips right side together, leaving about 3/8 of an inch tail on both ends. Then we're gonna draw a 45-degree angle line from the upper corner here. So just draw that with your fabric marker. Secure that in place with a pin, and then you're gonna go ahead and sew right on the line. Then you want to trim off that extra fabric, and that's it. Now you have joined your strips. Go ahead and press the seams open. Lay all of your 9 blocks with the sashings and the borders just like shown here. We're gonna start off by sewing the first block with the sashing 1. You're gonna sew this with 1/4 inch of seam allowance as well, and press that towards the sashing. Then we're gonna continue on with the next one. Now that we've sewn the first row together, we're gonna work the same way for the second row. Now that all the rows has been sewn together, we're going to work on the sashing 2. When sewing the rows together, you may want to pin the intersection where the sashing 1 and sashing 2 meet. This is to make sure that your fabric won't shift around when you sew this, causing you to have uneven line on the intersection. Next, we're going to sew the borders together. So we will start from the side borders first, then the top border, and the last will be the bottom border. Alright, so now that our quilt top is done, we are going to go ahead and baste this with the quilt batting and the quilt backing. So here I've got my quilt already sandwiched with the quilt backing and the quilt batting as well. So the way I'm gonna baste this is I'm going to use combination of pin and spray basting for this quilt. So I'm going to baste with pins on the middle section here, where the second row only, and then for the first row and the third row I'm just gonna use the spray basting. So starting off by pinning the middle section right on the center first. Once I've got my middle section basted with pins, I'm going to move on and base the rest of the quilt with spray basting. So I will show you how I base the bottom part here. Starting off from the backing fabric, I spray based it a little bit, and I'm gonna put the backing back and smooth everything out. And now I'm going to go on this side and do the same. And once everything is smooth here, I'm going to spray base the batting and lay my quilt top back and smooth everything. Alright, now that you've got your quilt basted, it's time to go ahead and quilt this. I'm going to quilt this piece with my walking foot, starting off from the center and then make my way around. I actually do the divide and conquer method. So what I did, I quilted one block at a time so it doesn't feel very overwhelming, and it's also easier since my sewing machine is very conventional. So obviously you can quilt this in any kind of quilting style that you prefer. You can do free motion, hand quilting, or combination of everything. So just have fun and experiment. So this is how my quilt turned out. I think it's looking pretty lovely. And if you see, I kind of like mix all kind of stitching. I have wavy lines, straight lines. I also use some decorative stitches. For the binding of this quilt, I actually made a separate tutorial. I used the decorative stitches for binding this quilt, and it was so much fun and a lot simpler, and the result is just as lovely. So if you want to have a look on that, I will link that down below in the description box. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thumbs up if you like this tutorial, and I shall see you next time with another fun sewing project. Goodbye!